Unknown killers murdered his daughter in front of him. But they made one fatal mistake. They didn't know her father was a detective. The story opens on a quiet night. 3 lifeless bodies slowly rise from beneath the dark water, floating to the surface one by one. The scene shifts far away to the city of Boston, where we meet our main character, a seasoned and experienced homicide detective named Thomas Craven. He is a man who has spent decades dealing with violence and tragedy in the most direct way possible. But nothing in all those years has prepared him for what is coming. He is standing at South Station, quietly waiting with the kind of patience only a man used to long hours can manage. He is there to pick up his daughter Emma, who is 24 years old and coming home for a visit. The moment she steps off and they find each other, Thomas moves toward her with the warmth of a father who misses his child deeply. She looks tired, more tired than she should, and something about the way she carries herself makes Thomas uneasy. On the drive home, he cannot help himself. He keeps glancing at her, asking questions, wondering out loud whether something is wrong with her health, whether she might be pregnant, whether she is keeping something from him. Emma smiles softly and brushes every concern aside. She is fine, she tells him, not pregnant. Yes, she is seeing someone, but she does not think her father would like the man very much. Thomas lets it go, choosing instead to simply enjoy having her home. He does not know, cannot know that these hours together are the last ones they will ever share. Back at the house, the two of them settle into a peaceful evening together. Thomas gets busy in the kitchen preparing a meal, while Emma sits nearby keeping him company with easy conversation. It feels like a normal, happy night between a father and his daughter. But then, without any warning, Emma begins to bleed from her nose. Within moments, the bleeding is followed by vomiting, sudden and violent. Panic takes over her face instantly. She begins to cry and says she needs to see a doctor right away, but as they step outside, someone shoots her. Thomas holds her in his arms and she tries to say something important, but the shot was fatal and she dies. Soon after, police arrive at the door. The initial assumption from officers on the scene is that Thomas was the intended target, that someone was trying to kill the detective and Emma was hit by mistake. Thomas barely registers any of it. He sits completely still while the officers talk around him, lost somewhere inside his own grief. A father who has just watched his daughter taken from him in the most sudden and senseless way imaginable.
Go, get out! Get out!
That night, alone in the bathroom, Thomas stands at the sink washing his face. He picks up his towel and sees that it carries the stain of Emma's blood. He does not throw it away. He folds it carefully and sets it aside. A quiet and heartbreaking act that says everything about how much he loved her. He cannot sleep. He wanders into Emma's room and sits among her belongings, simply wanting to feel close to her. While he is there, her cell phone begins to ring. He picks it up and answers. There is nothing on the other end, only silence. The call disconnects. Thomas stares at the phone, more confused and troubled than before. The next morning, Thomas goes back to work. He is not ready to sit at home, and he is not willing to step away from the only thing that might bring him any peace: the truth about what happened to his daughter. He asks the forensics team to pull the full contact list from Emma's phone. He visits his supervisors, who offer their condolences and gently urge him to take personal leave. His close friend and fellow detective Bill is there too, saying the same thing. Thomas listens, and then tells them plainly that the normal rules do not apply here. Nobody argues with him. He visits the medical examiner who handled Emma's autopsy.
Leave her alone.
The cause of death is confirmed, a gunshot wound. Before he leaves, Thomas quietly asks for a pair of scissors. He cuts a small lock of Emma's hair and carefully places it in his pocket, a private piece of her to carry with him. He sits alone in a park afterward, slipping in and out of painful memories, seeing Emma as a little girl, hearing her voice, feeling the unbearable weight of her absence. After he goes back to his house, his friend Bill calls and tells him that an officer has been assigned for his security, but he brushes it off, saying he doesn't need it. The next morning, Thomas stands on a quiet and empty beach and scatters Emma's ashes across the water. He goes home and searches her room more carefully this time. Inside her bag, he finds her work identification badge. It shows that Emma was employed by a company called Northmore, a government contractor. He keeps looking and finds something even more unexpected tucked away in her bedside drawer. A pistol. The discovery stops him cold. Emma was not the kind of person he would ever associate with firearms. He checks the registration on the weapon and traces it back to a man named David Burnham. Thomas decides he needs to find this man immediately. When Thomas arrives at David's home, he is met with immediate anxiety. David grabs a knife and kills the lights, refusing to open the door. Thomas uses his experience to let himself in calmly. As he opens the door, David attacks him. They start fighting each other. At last, Thomas gets the upper hand and starts to question him. Once the tension settles, David reveals that he was Emma's boyfriend. Thomas demands to know why David gave her a gun. David refuses to answer directly. He is frightened, clearly running scared, and tells Thomas that both of them are being watched right now and that Thomas needs to leave before something bad happens. Before Thomas goes, David hands over some of Emma's personal belongings, including her apartment keys. He also admits that he and Emma both worked at Northmoor, and that the company is not what it appears to be on the surface. Thomas gives David his card and tells him to call if he needs help. Thomas goes to Emma's apartment next. Inside, he comes across a device he does not immediately expect to find. A Geiger counter, the kind used to detect radiation. Acting on instinct, he holds it close to the lock of Emma's hair he had been carrying in his pocket. The device reacts immediately. The hair is highly radioactive. Thomas stands there absorbing what this means. That his daughter was exposed to radiation, and that whatever she was involved in was far more serious and far more dangerous than anything he had imagined. Around this same time, we learn that a man named Darius Jedburgh, a British intelligence consultant working in the shadows, has received information from a confidential source. The source tells him that the head of Northmoor, a powerful man named Jack Bennett, has been secretly and illegally manufacturing nuclear weapons. The materials being used are foreign in origin, which means that if these weapons were ever deployed, the blame could be placed on another country entirely. Emma, it is now becoming clear, had somehow discovered this secret, and she had been planning to expose it. Thomas continues working through Emma's contact list and eventually reaches a woman named Melissa Conway, one of Emma's close friends and a co-worker from Northmoor. Melissa is reluctant to meet, and even more reluctant to speak, but she agrees to give Thomas some background on the situation. She mentions Northmoor and tells him she will contact him when she is back in town.
I have your number, I'll call you.
Thomas does not wait. He goes directly to the Northmoor building to see it for himself. He makes his way to the upper floors where he is unexpectedly approached by Jack Bennett himself, composed, polished, and careful with his words. Jack offers his condolences for Emma's death and asks if he can help in any way. Thomas tells him simply that he wants to understand what his daughter did there. Jack reminds him, almost pleasantly, that nearly everything the company does is classified. Back at the station, a DNA match from the crime scene comes through. The gunman who shot Emma has been identified. He was a professional killer, a hitman for hire. This confirms beyond any doubt that Emma's death was not a random act of violence or a case of mistaken identity. She was deliberately targeted. Someone had her killed. The question now is who gave the order and why.
And why would a probe blow off 2 barrels of a shotgun instead of saving one for his target?
That night at home, Thomas burns some of Emma's clothing in his backyard, a private ritual of grief. As the flames burn low, he senses a presence behind him and spins around with his weapon drawn. Sitting quietly in the darkness of his yard is none other than Darius Jedburgh. Darius speaks calmly, without aggression. He explains that he had been brought in to silence Emma and to remove any remaining problems tied to her, including Thomas himself. He tells Thomas that certain powerful people had come to believe Emma was a terrorist.
You said my daughter was a terrorist. I didn't. But someone did.
He then shows Thomas photographs of the 3 bodies that were pulled from the Connecticut River at the beginning of the story. He explains that these 3 individuals had been trying to break into a Northmoor facility to gather evidence. They died while trying to escape. Then Darius reveals one more thing that changes everything. Emma had traveled with these 3 people on that mission. She made it out alive, they did not. And her laptop, which contained everything she had gathered, is now missing. Thomas finally begins to see the full picture. Emma had been carrying an enormous secret. She had tried to tell him something the night she came home, the night she died, but the truth never made it out of her mouth. It died with her. The following morning, Thomas goes back to David Burnham's apartment. The visit is unexpected, and at first David is calm enough. Thomas makes it very clear, without much patience left, that he needs answers. He pushes David hard until David finally takes him down to the basement where they cannot be overheard. There, David tells him everything he knows. Emma was not simply a corporate employee. She had been a committed activist who was deeply troubled by what Northmoor was doing. She had written a letter to a Senator Jim Pine, hoping that government intervention would force an investigation into the company's activities. She had also tried to reach a lawyer connected to Northmore named Sanderman, and the thing she had uncovered, the thing that got her killed, was Northmore's secret program to develop and stockpile illegal nuclear weapons. Thomas listens to every word. Before he leaves, he quietly returns the pistol he found in Emma's drawer, a small act of trust between two men trying to survive the same dangerous situation. That night, Thomas cannot rest. He sits in his car watching Jack Bennett from a distance, thinking about his next move. He starts chasing his car, but at the same time spots a black car approaching him from behind. He stops at a public washroom, and the two men in black suit goes after him. In the washroom, he breaks the glass and manages to escape. When the men arrive and see the glass shattered, they immediately go outside, but it is too late. Thomas drives away, but before escaping, he destroys their car, so they can't follow him. Thomas speeds after Jack Bennett and eventually cuts him off. He pulls out his gun, knocks out Jack's driver, and takes control of the vehicle.
What does it feel like?
Once inside, Thomas points the weapon at Jack and threatens him. After delivering his warning, Thomas steps out of the car and disappears, leaving Jack shaken and helpless. And then the very next day, Thomas receives the worst possible news. David Burnham has been found dead in his apartment, a single gunshot wound to the head, execution style. Another loose end has been cut. Another person connected to Emma has been eliminated. The people behind this are not leaving any witnesses standing. Despite the danger closing in from every direction, an unexpected and cautious friendship begins to develop between Thomas and Darius Jedburgh. Two men from completely different worlds, bonded by the same burning need to understand what happened and to hold someone accountable for it. Darius shares that Emma's fellow activists may have come into contact with radioactive substances during their mission to expose Northmore. He is as determined as Thomas to get to the bottom of it.
Oh, by the way, thanks for not killing me.
Thomas next tracks down the lawyer Sanderman, the man David had mentioned before his death. He finds him on his way to a legal meeting and confronts him directly. Sanderman is uncomfortable and defensive, dodging every question. Thomas is not interested in legal maneuvering. He tells Sanderman plainly that getting him into trouble is satisfaction enough, and that he is going to see the senator with or without anyone's cooperation.
I'm the guy with nothing to lose and doesn't give a shit. You tell him that.
He then goes to find Melissa again. She opens her door slowly, clearly living in constant fear. She tells Thomas something that freezes him in place. Emma had believed, toward the end, that Jack Bennett had found a way to poison her, that she was being slowly and deliberately made sick. Melissa hands Thomas an envelope with shaking hands and tells him she has a young daughter to protect. Before anything more can be said, Melissa is attacked and seriously injured. Thomas rushes her to the hospital. She survives, but the cost is devastating. Sitting alone in his car afterward, Thomas opens the envelope Melissa gave him. Inside is a disc. He plays it, and what he sees makes his chest cave in. On the screen is Emma, alive. Speaking directly into the camera, she explains in calm and precise detail that Northmore is manufacturing nuclear weapons illegally. She says she has stolen documents, photographs, and technical blueprints as proof. She explains that if these weapons were ever used, they were designed to be traced back to foreign nations, framing innocent countries for crimes Northmore committed. She describes how she organized a team to infiltrate the facility. And then, at the very end of the recording, she looks directly into the camera and says the words that break her father completely.
If you're watching this, I'll already be dead. I love you, Dad.
Thomas does not fall apart. He goes after a man named Robinson, who is connected to the deaths of the activists found in the river, and he confronts him directly and without mercy. He demands to know why the drowning deaths were covered up. He makes it absolutely clear that Robinson is going to tell him everything. Because unlike Emma's other colleagues, Robinson is still breathing, and Thomas intends to find out why. That night, back at Emma's apartment, Thomas uses the Geiger counter to scan everything he can find. When he opens the refrigerator and holds the device near a bottle of milk, it reacts immediately and strongly. The milk is radioactive. This was how Emma was poisoned, slowly from the inside, through something as ordinary and innocent as a bottle of milk kept in her own home. Thomas now knows exactly how she was killed and exactly who is responsible. Meanwhile, Jack Bennett discusses about the radioactive substance with Moore. Jack tells him that the substance killed Emma, and after Thomas had contact with Emma's belongings, now he has also been affected from the same substance. He also tells him that the substance is unsurvivable. Thomas visits Senator Jim Pine. He sits across from him calmly and tells the senator that he knows Emma contacted him, that she sent a letter. The senator confirms this, but hides behind classification. Thomas pushes him. Emma came to him for help and received none. He places the weight of that failure squarely on the senator's shoulders and urges him to act now, while there is still a chance to do the right thing. The senator listens. He makes no promises. Thomas walks out not knowing whether the man is a potential ally or simply another layer of the cover-up he is trying to tear apart. Shortly after leaving the meeting, Thomas notices two men in a dark van who have been tracking him. He gets into his car without reacting, then spends the rest of the afternoon leading them through a long and deliberate route before making his move. He stops them, gets them out of the vehicle at gunpoint, and makes sure they understand the message. These are armed men sent to watch him, and now they know he is watching back.
Welcome to hell.
Late that night, Thomas's old friend Bill shows up at his door. Thomas lets him in, and the two of them sit and talk. Bill dances carefully around the real point for a while before finally suggesting, as gently as he can manage, that Thomas is chasing something he should walk away from. Thomas looks at him and asks him plainly how much they are paying him. Bill admits, quietly and without excuses, that he has children and financial responsibilities. The conversation ends with no anger, just sadness. And then Thomas is suddenly sick. He vomits without warning, his body beginning to give out on him. The radiation is already in his system. The same two men from before come in, pointing gun at Thomas. One of the men knocks him out. He wakes up handcuffed to a bed inside a hidden medical room within Northmore's facility. He manages to break free from the restraints and waits. Hearing someone approach, Thomas quickly lies back down and pretends to be unconscious. When the man checks on him, Thomas suddenly attacks and knocks him out. Another worker witnesses the confrontation, but Thomas threatens him, takes his keys, and drives back to his house. At home later, he tries to pull himself together at the bathroom sink. He is pale, his hands are not steady. He is dying, the same way Emma died, and he knows it. But before his body gives out completely, there is one thing left he absolutely must do. With a pistol and what remains of his strength, Thomas drives to Jack Bennett's estate. Security tries to stop him at the entrance. He goes through them. He gets inside. Jack, caught off guard but not unarmed, manages to put a bullet into Thomas's chest. Thomas does not stop. He climbs the stairs, barely, and finds Jack now weakened from the exchange of gunfire. Thomas grabs him and pulls out the radioactive milk bottle, the same one used to slowly poison Emma. He forces Jack to drink it. Jack panics and runs to another room, scrambling to reach a hidden bottle of pills that he clearly keeps as an antidote for exactly this situation. Thomas reaches him before he can swallow a single one. Jack Bennett, the man who ordered the death of Emma Craven and covered up the murder of 3 others, does not get his antidote. Meanwhile, Darius Jedburgh has his own confrontation to handle. He sits across from Senator Pine and 2 government advisors in a closed room. They are already talking about how to spin the story, how to protect themselves, how to reshape the narrative, how to frame Emma as a dangerous extremist who posed a threat to her own father. They even discuss staging an assassination attempt on the senator to draw media attention away from Jack's death. Darius listens to all of it calmly. Then he tells them, in a quiet and steady voice, that they have completely misunderstood which side of history they are standing on.
Successful meeting? By what standards?
The meeting ends. Shortly after, a young police officer enters the room having heard gunshots from elsewhere in the building. Darius raises his weapon toward the officer, then stops. He asks the young man whether he has children, whether he has family. The officer nods. Darius lowers his gun. In that moment of unexpected compassion, the officer fires. Darius falls. His chapter closes. Elsewhere in the city, a journalist who had once approached Thomas outside a restaurant opens her mail to find an envelope. Inside is a collection of discs. She sits down and begins to watch. What plays on her screen is everything. Emma's recorded testimony, the documents, the evidence of Northmore's illegal nuclear weapons program, the cover-up, the murders. All of it laid out clearly and completely. Thomas had sent it to her before going after Jack. He had made sure that even if he did not make it out, the truth would. Emma's mission would be completed. Her voice would be heard. Her sacrifice would mean something. Thomas is brought to a hospital. The bullet wounds and the radiation poisoning have together taken everything his body had left. He lies in the bed knowing that he is not going to leave it. But something remarkable happens in those final hours. He feels Emma near him, not in memory, not in grief, but in presence. Her voice comes to him softly. Her spirit fills the room around him. They are together in the only way left available to them. In the film's last and most quietly beautiful moment, a warm and gentle light fills the hospital corridor. And in that light, Thomas and Emma appear side by side, walking together, hand in hand, moving forward into the brightness. A father and his daughter reunited at peace, together at last.